KUAM News Hotspot is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Howdy, everyone, and welcome to The Hub. I'm Nestor Licanto, and our guests this week are going to be talking about possibly one solution to our affordable housing issue. We have with us here today is Professor Ernesto Guadas of the University of Guam School of Engineering, and Ann De La Cruz, who is a co-founder of Star Sand Technologies. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you with us. Let's just start off, Professor, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then I'll ask Ann to do likewise.
Yeah, I'm Ernesto. I am an assistant professor at the School of Engineering of the University of Guam. And my focus of research interest is on sustainable building materials and also construction materials. And also I'm also working on geopolymer concrete and also for seismic design of structures, for example, with that one.
Okay. And Ann, talk about your background a little bit.
So I'm actually born and raised here on Guam. I left the island so I graduated from Academy of Our Lady in 98, left the island to go to college over at the University of San Francisco, went from an island to a city, and I was like, oh, I need to figure out how to pay for college. So I joined the Army ROTC program, which upon graduation I commissioned, joined active duty, did that for about 6 years, got out, only to marry back in. So military family had moved us around the world. We actually just moved back home from having lived in Japan for the last 4 years. Okay. And what brings me home is for two reasons. One, part of my family succession plan. Guam Imperial is my dad's company. He started 41 years ago. And my boys. I have 3 boys. My oldest is 8, my twins are 6, and you know, we've moved 15 times in the last 20 years. And
how about your background with respect to Star Sand Technologies?
Yeah, so actually, about a year ago, I knew absolutely nothing about 3D printing. And this in particular is 3D concrete printing. And so Adrian Sinclair is the man I met while we were stationed over at Yokota Air Base, so he is actually still there now. We met at a birthday party. He heard real estate and Guam, and he's like, let's talk. We had coffee, hit it off. I was sharing with him actually some of my insights about the real estate market here in Guam, and he said, hey, have you thought about 3D printing? And I'm like, sounds good. I know absolutely nothing about it. And he's like, no, you can print houses now. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. But, you know, Guam, you know, it's different, right? We like our concrete. And he's like, no, you can actually print homes with concrete. And so I said, wow, okay, well, that's different. Tell me more. He told me more. And then I told him, you need to come to Guam so that way you could actually see what the conditions are here and that you think this technology is actually deployable and feasible for the island. Yeah. And so he actually came here March of this year. And what we did is we just did a quick roundtable because I also brought private equity companies here. Right. That is where we had Ron Pangolin and his team with Platinum Properties. They talked to us about the residential market, the commercial real estate market. We had Dr. Gary Hiles talk to us about Guam's economic outlook. Right. And then we had Mel Mendiola with GITA talk to us about what GovGuam is doing.
So that was the additive construction roundtable that was hosted at the University of Guam. So when I heard about 3D printing and concrete homes, it's hard for, I think, the layman to kind of wrap their head around 3D printing of a concrete home. And Professor, maybe you could elaborate on how exactly does that work? How do you create a concrete home out of 3D printing?
So this one is basically we apply what we call the 3D, the additive manufacturing technique, in which, you know, it's just the same with the printer. We just this one is a 3D, so all we need to do is simply to have the robots which can print that one. So we just have to put, you know, the materials, which is, I think now we're working on the cement-based material. It's a mortar-based. And so all we need to do is simply to feed it on the machine, and then the machine will do all of those ones. It's just like a printer that we have, only but this one is I would say it's a large-scale printing of the structures for us to make a full-scale house.
Okay, you want to add to that, how that works?
Yeah, so I mean, it literally is like almost like an industrial size printer, and it literally just prints layers. The technology itself, the printer.
Like when you say layers, like it's like a hollow brick kind of thing, or what?
No, it literally is a layer by layer. Like it just kind of goes like this. Whereas in traditional construction, you tend to do brick by brick, and usually you start one area, then go another. This is just, it prints the entire house, if you will, in just constant, continuous mode. And it really eliminates a lot of what traditional construction does because, you don't have basically the printer does all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and you mentioned robots, right? So
Yes.
is that technology has to be brought in, right? We don't currently have that here on island, right?
Correct, and that's actually why we did that additive construction roundtable, because what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to bring the printer here and say, hey, here's this technology, it could solve our housing problems. What we wanted to do is we wanted to introduce what is the technology, what it can do, what are the applications with it that would apply here on Guam, and then the question is not only do you want, we know that you need it, but do you want it? I think that for us that was really the question, because yes, it's technology, but the magic isn't the technology. The technology itself is just the how, right? It's the people behind it, the community that comes together to take this technology and apply it in the community.
And I guess the first question by people who might be interested in a 3D home, 3D, is how much is it going to cost?
Great question. So the answer is we don't know, right? Until we bring the technology here and actually apply it. But what I can tell you is stateside, what the company has already proven is they built, I think, less than 300 square foot home, tiny home, in one day for $13,000 in raw material. So now, of course, we have to take that, bring it here, and then when you add in all the costs to bring the technology here, plus we also don't know, so the concrete, right, is, there's no proprietary concrete mix here. We literally take the sand, cement, lime, right, the just general ingredients, and we use a supply that's here. And because we don't know the quality of the sand, the quality of all of that we're using here, it's really hard to determine the chemistry and what would need to do to figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's actually why we're partnering with Professor Guades and his team with the EOG School of Engineering, is to figure out the material science, right? What we can do using Guam's natural resources.
You just piqued my interest even further, because you just said that you had like a kind of a tiny home model that was basically built in a single day.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You want to talk about more about that?
Yeah, that one is, the role of the university, particularly here, is first is we are going to help, for example, structural elements testing, where we are going to do testing in laboratory. That will also be helpful in getting the informations, in getting those, in putting that in a codes, for example, or probably that is part of the guidelines that will be used in Guam. And so that's where the university will come in. So we have to partner with them, and if we still have chance and we have resources, we can also try to test the full-scale house that we are going to build. The other one, the university's role is for us, although we need probably in the initial phase of the project, they might be bringing here some materials, but at the long term, we will be also working on how we can find material that is suitable for the 3D printing, that we can find it in Guam, and also that makes also us more sustainable when it comes to materials, instead of bringing materials outside and come to Guam.
All right, we got to take a short break, but we'll talk a little bit more about the challenges for this particular type of housing. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more of The Hub right after this. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Nestor Lecanto. We've been speaking with Professor Ernesto Guades and Ann Dela Cruz about this fascinating, what I find really fascinating, 3D construction of concrete homes. We were talking earlier about some of the challenges. Maybe you can elaborate more on that, the challenges of actually producing those types of homes here.
Of course, there are several challenges that I'm looking here. For example, we don't have yet guidelines and codes, because this is still a new technology. So it needs to have lots of informations, lots of testings coming on for us to have the informations that might be also helpful when it comes to evaluations of the projects. So we are going to also coordinate with the DPW for them to really look onto the possibilities when it comes to code requirements of that one. The other one also, because it's still new, is that we need to have materials that is really suitable here. That's also one of the challenges. But still, in the long term, we can still look for some materials which we can find in Guam, and that makes also our sustainable. So so far, those are the challenges that I think that might be facing with the 3D printing on Guam.
Yeah, and as the professor mentioned, it has to meet code, right? And one of the biggest challenges of building a home on Guam is to make sure it's typhoon-proof because we are in a typhoon belt. Is that something that can be addressed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it has already been proven in where this printer is actually operating and the things that it's doing that the strength, you control the mix, right? And this mix itself is what determines the strength of the product. And so when you talk about will it meet the seismic code, will it meet the typhoon code, those things can be addressed. And that's why we're working with, believe with, all the people to know what those requirements are, because not only do we want to meet it, we want to exceed it. Right. And so I think we have the people that we need to have those conversations to figure that out.
Yeah. Are there communities in the states that you can use as, kind of a guide for you? Like in places that, say, for example, are also subject to typhoons or, strong, heavy winds?
Yeah, I believe you've seen some of that. Could you talk on
Yeah,
that?
I've read about related to the guidelines, for example, in the International Building Code, they also specify that there is one provisions there that we can use different methods of constructions, which is not from traditional one. So we can use 3D printing there, but this is still subject to the review of the local building officials here. So, but there are existing codes related to structural members. So, for example, for the walls, we already have some guidelines there. But I think here, as long as we can do some testings and also some results of that one that will also aid in the evaluations of the building officials, then probably those challenges can also be met and solved. with that
Yeah,
one.
I think one of the other concerns might be whether or not, the structure itself is insurable
Yeah.
to protect, homeowners in the case of, of a storm or flooding or whatever it might be. Is that something that you've looked into as well?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you, the two questions we get often is questions regarding the code, right, as well as insurance. And we've spoke with several insurance companies here on island, and the answer they gave us is that it really will come down to the structural engineer. You have to have a local licensed structural engineer who will do all the do all the things that need to be done to meet and exceed those requirements. And in the report that they seal and certify, that's what the insurance companies are going to look at. They're going to look at that report because they also have their own structural engineers. And as long as on that report it says that they meet or exceed the base requirements, then for them that helps mitigate their liability, and therefore they will insure.
Okay, and once again, Star Sand's role in all of this would be to eventually bring in the printing equipment. It's still hard for me to say printing equipment.
Yes,
in
3D
my brain-
concrete printing, yeah,
My
a printer.
brain's saying 3D printing and building a concrete home, but that would be your primary role?
Yes, so two parts. One, we are the master distribution role. So with BudBot, so we are the ones that if anyone does want the printer, they would go through us. But the thing is we also want to be the developer, right? Because we want our intention is to design and print homes that are community centered, right? If you look around, if you look at most multifamily type homes or even just most spaces, you look at a lot and it's how can you fit as many units in one lot, right? Where we want to get to, which is very conducive to our culture, is we want to build community. We want our spaces to enable people to engage, right? Places to gather. So instead of a square, it's more like a circle, and where all the things that we do as a community are in there. So that's where we want to get to.
How about design? Would this be like a cookie cutter, one design, or would people be able to, build it to their interest or preference?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. Absolutely. It is, the technology itself just does the print, whatever you imagine that can be printed in concrete, you can make happen.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so how does that work? Do you work with, like, say, an architect, or and how? Take us through that process. So I'm a customer one, and you brought in the equipment, and so I'm interested in, say, building, a 3-bedroom home, 2-story, garage, whatever. Take us through that process. How would that work?
That's a really good question, and I actually can't answer that right now. And I'll tell you why, because I literally just moved back here August 10. We were looking to decide whether or not we were even going to move forward with this technology. And on November 17th, that was our community engagement where we were, making the decision: are we going to do this or not? We did not. We honestly, we didn't even know when anyone was going to show up, right? And not only did they show up, they stayed, they asked questions. And so for that, November 17 was really when we said, okay, I think we're going to do this. So now we're trying to do all the things we need to do to get set up. And so that question, great question, I personally am not there yet.
Yeah,
to be
so
able
we're
to answer that.
literally at the very
Early-
beginning
yes.
of
Initial
this whole
stage,
thing, but it
yeah.
is a fascinating subject, and, if it all, comes true, if it happens, it could solve a lot of the issues that are currently confronting. I wanted to know, you were talking earlier about that the robots would essentially be able to do most of this work, so there would be no need for say, construction workers, or maybe even for the finishings for the home, or what role, if any, would construction workers have to play?
I think they still need some manpower. It was discussed last time that there are still some things to be done by workforce. By workers there, where they're going to, for example, if there are some irregularities, so it needs still somebody to plane them. And also, I think there's also a need for guide when it comes to printing. But the one that is really doing is the robots, for example, a gantry type robots, where they usually do all of the job. But there's still some things there that needs to be refined. So that's where the manpower will come in to help also with that.
Yeah, and this would require specialized training to be able to operate the equipment?
Yes, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly the other reason why we feel this is a good solution for the affordable housing, is the workforce development itself. We can take basically someone with zero skills, zero experience, send them to Utah, where the manufacturer actually has a training facility, and in 5 weeks, they will complete their training and actually be certified to operate this, the printer. We can bring them back to Guam and basically put them to work, right? We don't have to wait for them to get a degree. We don't have to wait for them to go through, the normal channels you would have to go through to work in the construction field. And so the fact that now we can develop our own workforce, right, using our own people, and then put them to work to address the problem we all know we have here.
Yeah, and how much space would, say that, printer take up? How much space does it need, and
Yeah, there's several ranges of sizes of the printer. The smallest size is 15 by 15, and as large as 100 by 100. And the 100 by 100 could essentially print up to 23 feet high and 10,000 square foot of space. So basically an industrial warehouse.
yeah, and so it would, the parts, if you will, would be
They're configurable.
yeah.
Yes.
You would produce the parts, then whoever, the homeowner, the construction worker, whoever, would pick that up and then bring it to their site, or?
Oh, yes. So the machine itself is portable. So we
Oh,
can
okay.
bring it
So
to
you
the
bring it
site.
to the site, okay.
It will
Yeah.
build, right? And then we break it down and we take it away.
Okay, wow, that's even more convenient for the homeowner, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could build their property or their home right on the property that they purchase, yeah?
Yes, we bring the printer there, we use island resources, right, for the supply. We use our own workforce that we train and develop the skill set.
Okay, we've been talking, I've been kind of envisioning single-family dwellings, but is it also possible to build multi-unit or condominiums or apartment buildings?
I think right now we're focused on the single family, so that's really the conversations we've had with the manufacturers. It has been just about that. Could it do that? I haven't asked that question yet.
Yeah. And it would be able to comply with all the regular things of a home, like, the sewage connections, other utility connections, power connections, just be like building a home
Yes.
out of,
It's essentially new construction. So
Yeah,
it's new
new
construction, so all the steps that you would take with new construction, you would do the same with this. The only difference is because of this technology, you can build faster, cheaper, with better quality, because it's concrete.
yeah. How soon do you think this could happen?
Well, it depends on how quickly people want us to get started. Because as we shared, a lot of the challenges is on the code itself, right? Bringing the printer here, that's easy. Getting the supply, we can have access to that. It's getting through the wickets of the permitting process so that we can actually start. I think that's the area that we need to work through.
Yes.
Okay. And in your discussions with the stakeholders at the, at the round table, did they bring up any concerns or challenges to you that you weren't previously aware of?
The challenge or the questions that we heard at the event were all the challenges that we had heard in any conversations that we have had. So I do feel that at the event we actually got very positive response. In fact, I would almost say optimism that this technology is, they saw the possibilities with what this can do. And the neat thing too is, yes, it could address our affordable housing, but there's so many other applications. One of the things that we can do too is infrastructure, right? So drainage, piping, concrete piping. We could even do, if people want to improve our parks, right? Concrete benches, concrete tables. I think it's really fresh, right, in people's minds with the typhoon and just a reminder of what damage natural disasters can do. And so if we're going to rebuild, right, does it not make sense to rebuild with concrete? And now we have this technology to be able to do that with. This technology will actually enable that investment.
Yeah, it sounds like a real game changer, I mean, and like, I wouldn't even think of the fact that you could also build, like what you said, for parks and stuff. You can partner with the government, and it could make things just run a lot faster,
Yes.
So where are we at now in terms of the rules and regulations or requirements or of bringing this equipment here? Once it lands, you got to go through all of the bureaucratic red tape to get it.
Yes.
Where are we? Can you explain how and where how that's going to happen?
We're still so early that we're getting our Guam business license. Let me say that.
Yeah. Okay. And then you'll find out from public. Have you was Public Works at this meeting at UOG, and did they?
They were
have any input?
invited. I didn't actually see the sign and roster to know who actually came to represent, but we did. I do know that the invitation was sent out.
Yeah, and they would be the primary
Yeah.
agency that you need to work with in getting this whole thing started. Yeah.
Yeah, I also have a meeting with them regarding the 3D printing. I have meeting with the DPW, and so I presented this concept, this technology, and so they are aware of this one. So I think the moment that Stars and will bring here the equipment, then can start working with the printing and the preliminaries, that probably we can submit the documents for the DPW to work on that one. And so that's the start. That's the start of 3D printing.
Yeah, and it's so new that I imagine that DPW itself will have to gear up. They need to do their own in-house
Yes.
research, get their folks up to speed on what this 3D printing is all about, so that they can properly regulate it, for the protection of the public. Okay, we're going to take one more break, and we'll be back with Ernesto and Ann right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to The Hub. We're with Professor Ernesto Aguades and Ann Dela Cruz of Star Sand Technologies, and we've got just a couple of minutes left. So, Professor, let me just start with you. Just tell us, in your opinion, why this is a good idea and what benefits it will provide Guam in the long run.
Yeah, firstly because the purpose really here is for affordable housing. As Ann mentioned, is about affordable housing. And also, this is a new technology for Guam, so we have the incubations and also the applications of this. And the other one also is that we need some workforce training for our, to establish workforce here. And so by this project, we'll be able to have the workforce training for students. And also we can also establish here different partnerships with different offices, like those things. And of course, this is there will be several mentoring process from Star Sand and also from the University of Guam on our students, and also for those who are interested in 3D printing.
Yeah. Ann?
When I first, I just think back to when I first got introduced to technology, and as you said, Nestor, it is a game changer because not only in the field of affordable housing, where it could affect supply, right, and it could affect workforce development, the two things that are really hard right now. And I think our thinking is, scarcity breeds innovation, and here in Guam there is so much scarcity, right? I mean, stateside you can print stairs with concrete, but most people stateside Would they choose to do that? No, when they have other options. What options do we have? So I think because of that, we have an incredible opportunity to be a part of something that can truly build possibilities for our island, for our people. Yes, with affordable housing, which is the biggest pain point, but then there's so many other applications,
Sure.
right? I think timing-wise, it's a great stage of where we're at, of all the things that we can do. And I think for me personally, I'm truly grateful to be part of it all, right? Just to see the community come together, right? And see the possibilities that this technology could do for the people. So for me, I'm just really grateful to be here.
Yeah, and it really would address, I mean, if all works well, it really would address what has been, a current and future problem, I think, is if you can build it fast and at lower costs, and I think it's going to be a big benefit to a lot of folks on Guam. So best of luck to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Professor Ernesto Guadas. This is Ann Dela Cruz of Starsen Technologies. I'm Nestor Lecanto. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on The Hub.